I have some questions for you.
Okay.
And this is left over from the last time we talked.
Okay.
So when we brought up the subject of resentments,
Okay.
and you said, I learned a long time ago.
Yeah.
What did you learn a long time ago that uh, taught you to not hold on to resentments as opposed to a lot of people, uh, myself included, that have grown up with learning to having to either learn
Yeah.
to work on those resentments or to um,
I learned that it was only costing me when I wanted it to cost for the other person.
how did you learn this, or who did you learn this from, or and how
Because
old were you when this came to you?
I realized when I was working through my own resentments,
Okay,
really
so you
I was,
did have resentments
yeah,
up until
yeah.
what age?
I mean, they still creep in, but they don't
Okay,
last long.
okay,
Uh, because I have to understand when there's a cost, when I realize that the resentment is costing me something, or that there's a cost involved, then it's really easy to let go of it.
right.
And so um, I realized, I'm thinking of a scenario. Okay, I got a scenario where I was watching this individual who I had such a resentment for. I was watching them interact with the world, and my resentment towards them was doing them no good. Like, it wasn't affecting them. It was only affecting me.
They were getting along just fine with your resentments, weren't they?
Yeah. They were living life just well.
How
Just
old
how
were
they
you?
normally are. And whether or not my resentment was removed from me or I continued to hold that resentment had no impact on them. It
How old
only
were
impacted
you when
me.
you had this epiphany?
How old?
How old? Yeah. What age? What age were you?
19? 19.
Okay.
My parents understood that too, and they were much older in life. My dad was in his 50s at that point. My mom was in her 40s. And they had a lot of resentments. And they took a
Just out of curiosity, I mean, just out of curiosity, what? So your dad was of the baby boomer generation, and your mom would have been.
She's 10 years below that, whatever that generation is. So he's right on she's she was born in 50. She's Generation X. I think she was born in 19.
You would be at the one of the
She was
first of the
born in
generation
1953.
in 1953.
Yeah,
That's the year I was born.
yeah. So she was born in 53.
But I would still be considered
A baby boomer.
a baby boomer. Yeah.
Okay, so she's still a baby boomer.
But just out of curiosity, without giving any details about their personal lives, what types of resentments did you see them having?
So that, like, so both of them were divorced.
Oh, okay.
So things like that, like
Right.
resentments towards the ex-husband or ex-wife, resentments towards even their children at times, or resentments towards co-workers that made their life a little harder at their job. resentments in friends, resentments in entities. That's a big one.
What do you mean?
Well, like a resentment from the actual like maybe you're a resentment towards man, I don't know why it's coming to my mind, but TVA. If you work for TVA, or you have a resentment towards, or even, I mean, I know people that have resentments towards their utility company because it's their utility company, right?
Well, it's funny. It's interesting that you say that, because I went back and looked at step 4, because we mentioned that in terms of amends and
Oh yeah.
people's convoluted idea of how amends are supposed to be made. And you were talking about people thinking that they have to go in person when that's not really exactly how amends don't come in the 12 steps until the 9th step, which is way down the road. But
which is so, because I think it's the easiest thing to work through. I mean, but I'm also
now
oh
you
yeah.
do. But it took you, that's the reason I wanted to know what age you were. But I looked back in step 4, when resentments are just presented in say the 12-step program, or in of the different types of 12-step programs. And it's like identifying the people you resent and identifying the institutions you resent, like the water company, like the cable company, like this, like you mentioned.
And I'm pretty sure that Comcast is still doing really well, even though I haven't discussed it. Right? And it's not doing them, like, it's not like my hate for them isn't changing. I like how they function. It's only impacting how I function.
Exactly. And you telling them you are not going to get my business anymore. Okay. Bye.
And even as a therapist, if someone came to me, and I have a small practice, right? And they said, I just this isn't gonna work out. Especially if they said I have a resentment towards you, Taylor, I would say this is part of the process. And if if they need to move on, great. But I don't think it's gonna truly impact my practice.
Okay.
And I have a small practice, so I can't imagine how Comcast feels when they lose a valued customer. So,
well, we
that
do want to feel important, and we do want to feel like there's, we've been a good customer, we've been loyal, we want some special attention for that. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to tell them they don't get my business anymore. And they're a big corporation. They don't care.
Right. Right.
But these are the resentments. These are the resentments that we hold.
Yeah.
People, institutions, and like you say, entities.
And God.
And God, yes.
Or whatever spiritual, because there is a spiritual component to it.
There is a spiritual component to it, and that's where in that part of step 4 on resentments, the effects that resentments have, looking at how does it affect me in my daily life, and how is it affecting my relationships, and how is it affecting my spiritual life?
Yeah.
How is
and
it
when we look at
this relationship?
When we look at the spiritual component, I see usually there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame that shows up at that level.
We are on the same page today, because I wrote down prior to us meeting, the feelings involved in resentment, guilt, shame, fear, and a lot of anger
Mhm.
and being.
And I mean, I don't know about you, but that stuff feels real uncomfortable.
They are real uncomfortable.
And
They're not uncomfortable. They're miserable.
yeah.
That
And
goes back to you, like
and
you
if
talking about your poison.
if I went to Comcast, and I'm using Comcast as an example, but if I went to some guy named Tony who I have my resentment towards, or I mean, I'm making up names, Michael or Andy or whatever, and I go to them and I'm like, hey, do you feel guilt? Do you feel shame? Or do you have anger? And they'd be like, no, I'm totally great, living life. Well, I have resentment towards you, and that's what I feel.
And I want you to feel it too.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they would say, heck no, I don't want to feel that stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's where the saying comes from. The best revenge is living well.
Yeah.
And I hate to use that, in terms of the revenge word, but in other words, live your life well and take care of you. But just to kind of recap real quickly in terms of what I just like the way step forward just sum things up in terms of resentments, the identification of the people you resent, the institutions. What are my motivation and beliefs, and what dishonesties do I have within myself that I've contributed? And what inability or unwillingness do I have to experience the feelings that I might have because I'm so frustrated and angry with this person or this company or this institution? Am I afraid at looking at my part of it, what I play into it, and how much I'm browbeating myself as opposed to having any effect on that other person or that other entity. And then what you mentioned before, how has it affected my relationship with myself or my relationship with others, my relationship with the higher power or God or an evolved self, whatever the God of your understanding is.
And some people, it's like if you look at that and you're trying to get that on paper, some people, it's real easy to hear those words and be like, got it. Others are like, I don't even know where to start with that.